Okay, yeah, so today we're talking about 13 Lives, the movie that just came out, a couple weeks ago, beginning of August here?
Right at the end of July, I think.
In July on Amazon. Was it on Amazon? I actually forget where I watched it. Amazon?
It is on Amazon. It's an Amazon original.
Did you notice there was actually another movie about the same incident that came out a couple years earlier?
I mean, I watched one documentary about it. I saw that there were a bunch of... I mean, there's a ton of content related to it. Are you talking about like another like fictionalized version or like a documentary?
There's another movie called The Cave from 2019, and I'm guessing their whole goal was just to be first because it is a 0/47 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oof.
Yeah, so I'm guessing they're like, quick, we must make a movie about this.
It's an actual Thai production, though.
Oh, is it? Okay. I thought it did have... Well, I feel bad, but apparently they didn't do a very good job. Anyway, this movie was very solid, and I do have... Well, okay. We'll talk about the movie first, and then we get into maybe the story here. But so the movie is a 88/94 on Rotten Tomatoes, directed by Ron Howard, stars Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell, Joel Edgerton, and many others. Super high quality production. Several times throughout, I couldn't actually find like how did they film this? Like, so it was filmed in Australia and in Thailand, but I don't even understand how they could have begun to film some of these scenes. Were they basically were they making sets and flooding the sets?
They built sets, yeah.
Okay. I didn't actually find that. Okay.
Yeah, the shots of them actually like diving, you know, those shots where it's like the real tight rocks and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all. It's basically like styrofoam sets that they then had to cover in like, you know, epoxy or like waterproofing stuff, and you know, so that they could flood those sets, and then they were filming basically inside of those. They're like, yeah, artificial caves.
Huh.
Even the scenes where they are filming, you know, once they find the boys, and there's that like big kind of open cavern.
Right.
That was actually the first set that they built. And I watched a video of Ron Howard talking about like that set and those scenes. And I guess they had like multiple places where like basically the set was doors that they could just like open up so they could do like crane work and stuff with the cameras, and then shut it and film from another angle.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, like set design and production design is really, really high quality. Because, I mean, those scenes look real. And they actually like... They made the water like murky and stuff like in real life. And all of the scenes where you see someone diving that looks like Viggo Mortensen, that's Viggo Mortensen. The guy that looks like Colin Farrell.
In a controlled set, but still, right.
True. But like they did all of their diving scenes.
Oh, wow.
They didn't have like stunt doubles come in to, you know, and they could have because they're wearing masks and goggles. Like you could easily say, I'm not going to do that. But...
Oh, crazy. So, no, very, very impressive. Yeah, I could definitely see it. I'm guessing it'll be Oscar eligible. And I could see in those technical, like art and set decoration might be like, or in special effects or whatever, could be definitely one where maybe it could contend. So I really enjoyed the movie. It's very suspenseful. Like you're kind of like on edge, even though you know this mostly has a happy ending. And obviously this is all based on a true story. We are going to spoil it. But again, hopefully you either followed it in the news or saw it. Although so much of this I actually wasn't aware of. I was watching the whole movie thinking like, I know they all get out. Oh, shoot. I didn't know a Navy SEAL died. And so, like, I was like, he'll be fine. Oh, no, he's not fine. I just assumed everyone made it out alive.
Yeah. I was only peripherally aware of the details of this.
Same.
I was pretty sure that all of the kids got out, and when we get on to... Well, I guess it's not really a spoiler, because, like, yeah, it's a true event that was like in the news, but
4 years ago, yeah.
So the way that I knew, I was like, I'm pretty sure all the kids get out. Like maybe a couple of them don't, because I knew that there was like someone died. I didn't.
Okay.
I guess I never knew that it was a Thai Navy SEAL. Maybe I thought it was one of the kids or the coach or something. But once they came out with the whole plot element, which is actually true in real life of how they actually did it, where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to like drug these kids and put them under sedation. I was like, oh, okay, there's no way that any of these kids died, because then you don't make a movie about it afterwards. Like,
that's a good point. And they did kind of hang a lantern on that so it is definitely dramatized. I couldn't actually find a lot of details because it seems like a lot of the details are just in the books. Both the guys, both, let me get their names here before I don't mess them up. Both Rick Stanton and John Valentin. I don't know how Valentin. I don't know.
Valanthin.
Valanthin. Okay. Both those guys actually did write books about this event. And I think John's book is actually called 13 Lives. Rick's is a little more broad. It's something about diving, aquanaut, or something like that. I forget off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But they did mention in an interview I saw that this is a dramatization. They didn't necessarily pick apart things, although we'll mention some. But
yeah,
I kind of got the vibe, without doing a deep dive, pun not intended, into it, that decision to anesthetize the kids was less. I mean, there was inherent risk, but the way they played up in the film, like, it was this like really, really tough decision. Should we even try? Should we not? There's no way it'll ever work. I think that decision-making process seems to have been dramatized. Like, it was pretty much like, yep, that sounds like a good plan. It's risky, but what else are we going to do? As opposed to they sell it as like, there's no way we can even try this. It's unethical.
Right. Well, because everyone is kind of, I think in real life was kind of in the same boat as Rick Stanton, where it's like, if we don't do this, they're going to die anyway. Like,
right.
This is kind of the only option we have. Either they're going to die on this rescue mission, or they're just going to die, and then we're going to have to pull their bodies out afterwards. Like, this is kind of the only thing we can do. Because there were other options that they considered before. Like, they were considering, like, drilling and getting down to them from the top.
And I thought about that. I'm guessing the risk of a cave-in was probably just too high. They don't really mention that in the movie, though, I don't think.
I don't think they do, and it's probably cut for time, but apparently it wasn't so much a risk for cave-in, which I'm sure there was a consideration, but also just it would have taken too long. Like, they said that if they wanted to drill down to them, it would have taken a month.
Oh, okay. To do it safely. Gotcha. You could do it safely, which is crazy when there's already openings, because the water's getting in through those openings, but yeah.
Right. Even just, they were considering, well, can we just drill a small hole just to, like, for ventilation, to give them air, so it gives them more time, and even that was going to take too long.
Okay. So
it was like, by the time we actually drill the hole, like, they will have either starved to death or, succumb to hypoxia because the carbon dioxide levels are getting too high. So, yeah, it was basically the water rescue was kind of the only option from not very long into the operation. And then, yeah, when they decided to drug the kids to put them under, it was like, yeah, it's like two follows one. It's like the only thing we're going to be able to do to get them out, because they can't swim. Like, most of those kids couldn't even swim.
And even if they could, it was going to be far too dangerous because of the rushing currents. You would just basically bash your skull up against thing, or you drown.
And just like we see in the movie, like, they take the Thai guy.
Oh, right.
The worker that they're trying to dive out, and that's only like, it was like a couple hundred meters or something, and he was an adult and freaked out.
Right. Which they obviously put in there. I don't know if that actually happened. They actually they basically put that in there to show you how dire the need was to sedate the kids. Yeah.
True. Yeah. I don't know if that was necessarily true, a true event, but yeah, you're right. It does go to show that, like, when people get underwater, they do weird stuff.
Because it's your instinct. Your instinct is to go up. I must go up. I must survive. I must go up. And you start going crazy to do that. Yeah.
Right. There's I know, like, for, like, rescue divers, one of the things that you have to do as part of your training is, like, rescue someone who is actively fighting you, who is, like, actively trying, and they'll, like, pull on the hoses and on the mask, and, pull your breather out, you pull your mask off, and, like, because people, when they get in life or death situations like that, like, your fight or flight kicks in, and for some people, it's just, I'm just going to fight. I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight the water.
Right.
And, literally, like, they're not even thinking about it.
No, right. They're not stupid. It's an instinct thing. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And let's rewind a second here. So the boys,
sorry.
So the boys got trapped in a cave. So, if you have no idea what we're talking about, hopefully you've seen the movie or following the show, but this is not to be confused with the miners. Was that in Chile? The miners a few years before that were trapped. So this was a youth soccer team in Thailand who, pretty much as we see in the film, they got out of soccer practice. There was a birthday party that night, and basically between soccer practice and the birthday party, they went to go explore a cave that they had explored a million times before, and it was just kind of, it's a normal, almost like state park kind of thing.
It's a popular spot. Like, if you go there, there's, like, signs and stuff out front, and there's, like, a parking lot. Like, it's a place that people go, like, into this cave, looking around. They just went really far in, and also it started raining really heavily.
Right. And in the movie, they basically play it like, okay, the monsoon season came 6 weeks earlier than usual, and so that's why they weren't dumb to be in there. And that seems to be close. Like, it was an unexpected kind of early thing. I didn't find the 6-week thing necessarily online, but this cave, as they say in the film, it does flood every year. There's signs posted when you shouldn't go in. So it's either possible that I don't know if there were signs up in this particular instance, but anyway, they weren't considered dumb for going in, but it is a dangerous cave at times. It's just, poor assessment, whether it was early monsoon season or just they didn't realize the rain was going to rain that day, but flooding is always a risk. They thought they were okay. They'd been in a bunch before. They'd actually been in far deeper before. I saw somewhere that said they had gone even like 8 kilometers deep before in these caves, and they were only trapped about 2 kilometers in, I think.
Yeah, prior to this incident, Rick Stanton and John Valanthan, they had dived together before for years and years, but they also both set world records together. Mm-hmm. So they set a world record in 2004 for the greatest depth achieved in a British cave. And then they also set a record in 2010 for the longest cave penetration dive, and it was 8,800 meters. So almost 9,000 meters into a cave system in Spain.
Oh, wow. And I just kind of meant the boys had gone deeper into the cave before, but yes,
I thought you meant the divers. Okay, sorry.
Right.
I thought you meant the divers.
No, but that works though too. So yeah, we can kind of transition to these guys. So yeah, basically the waters rise, the boys get trapped because of the water, and the third thing that it looked like, my understanding is, the movie made it seem like, other than like a couple pockets of air throughout the way, they made it sound like it was just water the whole way. There was definitely times when they were getting the boys out where they were dragging them across on dry, quote, dry land. And it was kind of more back and forth between, okay, we got to dive this segment. Okay, now we got to carry them across a dry part for a while, and then we go back into the water. And they kind of left that out of the movie completely.
Yeah. They show kind of the first time, there's like a long series of shots of them diving to kind of illustrate how far it is. And then they just kind of like, they're not going to do that every single time because the movie would have been like hours long. But they do a good job. I like that they put the little schematic up of the cave to show where everyone is. That helps huge with, mentally where everyone's at. And then also they put on their like, oh, this is 8 hours in. Like it shows like distance, like they're however many thousand meters. And then it says like, oh yeah, but like when you see them surface and like they come up and see the boys, that was like 8.5 hours of diving.
Right. Now, there's another dramatization thing, though, because in the interview I saw these guys, some British TV show these guys were in after their books were coming out, and Rick said twice, just kind of casually mentioned, well, yeah, and it was 2.5 hours, to get them out. It was a 2.5 hour swim to get them out. I'm like, wait a second. The movie makes it the movie makes it like twice that, and that's one way. So it's they definitely extended that. Rick himself said it was 2.5 hours. Which, not that that's short, but I was making notes like, oh my gosh, like, they would have to bring, if this is like an all-day trip for them, they got to bring food, and where are they using the restroom, and all those kinds of things they left out of the movie. It's like, well, yeah, because they probably did have some of that, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need to bring food if you know you're going to be in and out in 5 hours or whatever. And if you think that 2.5 hours out, it's probably a lot slower, because you get in quicker, and it was never quick because of the visibility and the tight turns and stuff, but yeah, anyway, it could be a round trip of less than 5 hours, where I was thinking they were going like 13-hour round trips to get these boys in and out. I'm like, this is crazy. Which the movie almost kind of like didn't sell, other than it kept saying these times. It almost didn't seem to fit with what we're saying. And maybe that's why, because it didn't quite take as long each way as they made it seem.
Which, I wonder why that choice was made. Like, why?
I agree.
Because 2.5 hours, that's impressive anyway. Like, 2.5 hours as a like that, just spending 2.5 hours in a wetsuit sounds miserable. So why do you have to say that it was 8.5 hours one way? And then it's like, okay, so like they didn't do anything else. They just like, they wake up, get in the water, dive there, dive back, and then immediately have to like get out of the water and go to sleep for the next day. Like that doesn't, it doesn't, the math doesn't math. And also the real amount of time is already impressive. I wonder why they felt the need to put that in there.
Yeah. There was the third one I was thinking of too. I was saying there was a few areas they had ramped up the tension, and I can't remember the third one. I mean, the rain was real. I mean, that was the thing. I didn't see. Did you see anything about them actually diverting the rainwater from the top? I actually didn't find that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they did. The engineer, that we see in the movie, is a real person.
Oh, okay.
I watched a documentary thing where they were interviewing him about the water engineering that he was doing. They were diverting a ton of water away from...
I guess they even say that in the closing credits, don't they? How much water was diverted. So that'd be a weird thing to make up. Yeah.
I don't remember how much it is. I know on the Wikipedia page it said at the peak,
millions of gallons.
Yeah, at the peak it was 420,000 gallons an hour.
I guess I never even thought about, I get this is monsoon season, Southeast Asia, but apparently rain is a lot more water than I ever think about. Because especially when we measure it in inches, oh man, we got 6 inches of rain in a week. That's flooding. I'm like, well, 6 inches. I guess they don't think about that being millions of gallons. I'm like, that's just kind of unfathomable. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there also, so something that I saw in the movie that I thought, oh, okay, that made, this is probably one of those things that they kind of overhype or dramatize. When they run out of pipes or whatever, and then they just start using bamboo and start lashing it together with vines. No, that was real. They really did that. There's footage of people cutting bamboo to make pipes and then cutting down vines from the jungle and building those little stands out of the bamboo sticks.
Yeah.
And making just to get just a little more water. So that was real. And the fact that that they ruined those farmers' rice crops for that year.
Yes, okay.
That was all real too, yep.
And again, that makes sense. If you're going to, in a movie that's very closely based on a true story, anything you're going to include in the post or pre-movie text on screen, it's kind of crappy if you're making that stuff up. The audience kind of trusts that even though this is a movie, it's a fictionalization, a dramatization, we kind of trust that you're not lying on those things or tweaking those things. Some movies do, though. Some movies do.
I was going to say, not in this movie, at least that I know of, but there are movies where that happens.
Yes, there are. And I think we've even talked about some, I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. They were talking about when they were diverting all the water away, and it was, it was millions of gallons of water, but there's still millions of gallons of water going into the cave system, too.
Right.
So they were talking about, it was basically trying to siphon water out of a bathtub while you have the faucet running.
Yeah.
The bathtub is still going to fill up.
Right. You're helping, but...
Yeah, you have a couple straws coming out. It's not going to fill up as fast, but, the water is still going to fill up.
Right. And also, that's one thing, too, I saw was... I didn't say how big the little... They called it a shelf where the boys were... Because it's not really an island, but, this area that the boys were up on to stay out of the water, that they actually even had to, they were moving rocks around. They were actually, trying to make that area bigger and more secure by moving rocks to help build it up, which they kind of didn't really focus on that. Or because honestly, the movie doesn't really focus on them. It kind of does focus on the British guys that come in as the experts, as they're kind of the main characters. But also the movie almost doesn't really have a main character in a way that I actually kind of don't like, but I'll talk about that here later. So basically what they show in the film, and this seems to be accurate, there's a British guy who is living in this part of Thailand. And so when this happens, he immediately says, oh, hey, I know these guys that are experts in this. And the Thai Navy SEALs, you can see in the film, it kind of makes sense. Again, I didn't see this in real life, but they're a little bit well, I mean, I think we got this. We don't need some civilians wherever they're from to come in. But they kind of then make up the very interesting point that no, this is very, very, very specific. You guys train in open water, and there's only a few of us in the world that are just basically, we nerd out on diving in flooded caves. That's our thing.
Right.
And there's a handful of us, and we've done it. They'd already done rescue missions or recovery missions. This was actually one of their most successful one. They've saved people before. Others were just straight up body retrieval, where, hey, someone got stuck and drowned, can you go get their body? And and Rick and John were the kind of guys that would go and do that. And we see that in the film where they're expecting, and Rick is so kind of detached, but it makes sense if you think that he flew all the way from Great Britain to Thailand, and in his mind, his job is to go retrieve the bodies of these 13 people. That's what he's going to be doing. That's what he signed up for, is to go get their bodies for their families.
In that video that I was talking about where they were talking to Ron Howard, he said that in that scene, when they first find them, where John Valanthan, Colin Farrell's character, is super excited that they're all alive, and Viggo Mortensen almost seems not disappointed, but he's a lot more kind of reserved.
Yeah.
That is true to life of the way that they both felt. Apparently John Valantham, when they found him, was like immediately optimistic, like, oh, okay, they're alive, we can rescue him. And Viggo Mortensen was like, oh shit,
we're gonna have to watch them die now. Yeah,
we're gonna have to watch them die either in a botched rescue or watch them die slowly. And he said it was like seeing ghosts.
Right, or also like getting punched in the stomach.
Right.
Yeah,
it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, there's just nothing you can do. It's like, oh crap, they're not dead yet. Like,
right,
not disappointed, but like heartbroken.
Yeah,
because he saw, and that'd be all right. So that was,
and that was something else that was kind of interesting in the movie. Was then after they find them, he's like, well, now everyone knows that they're alive, and now if we don't rescue them, this whole thing is going to be considered a failure. Like, we found them, we didn't even know if we were going to find them,
right,
at all,
right.
And now that we did, and that's considered, that's like it's like the new start of your mission. Whereas before, that would have been like the end. Like, oh, you find all the dead bodies, you bring them out, and it's like, oh man, that's a bummer. But now it's like, oh, we found them, they're alive, and now if they die, now you suck at your job.
Now you failed, right. You basically, you became a lose-lose situation in their minds anyway. And then that's why they actually didn't want everyone to know they were alive. They basically, he was going to show the rescue workers, I think, the film, and then immediately just everyone knows. And they're like, ugh, now it's like, definitely a crazy situation. The one other thing I was going to say too about Rick and John, they'd also both have, they didn't detail it in the film, and I couldn't find specifics either, but of course the specifics would probably be well beyond my ability to understand, but they've both specially made their own equipment for like cave diving and stuff too. So like there's specially things they've developed over the years to make their own kind of gear for these situations.
Yeah, I guess Rick Stanton has like invented like certain cave diving specific gear.
Yeah.
Including a way to hold your rebreather like at your side, like kind of on your hips rather than on your back.
Okay.
Like you would think of like a normal typical scuba diver.
Right.
Just because it makes you flatter so you can go between tighter gaps. So yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that they're talking about when they talk about like when they're talking to the Thai Navy SEALs, like this is a completely different type of diving. Like it's a completely different skill set to just, to diving from, the open water up onto a beach.
Yeah. So here's where I'm going to step in real quick and say, while this is a very high quality production, and I don't necessarily have a lot of nitpicks about this film, I actually don't think it's a very good movie, just from the sense of storytelling. I mean, this is an amazing true story that absolutely needs to be told, and they told it very well, but they didn't necessarily make a good narrative film out of it, if that makes sense. This feels more just like a technical dramatization, almost like a documentary reenactment, as opposed to, we actually don't get to know anybody. Like, there's no, even though you tear up at times, there's still not enough heart into it, and I wish they'd actually maybe narrowed in their scope. You could have gone more into the background of how John and Rick actually got these skills, flashbacks to past things they've done that didn't work, and then how this does, and got more into the characterization of this and their backstories, as opposed to everyone is fairly two-dimensional in my mind. And again, I'm not saying I dislike the film, but I'm just saying I don't consider it a great movie because of those limitations.
I guess the only counterpoint to that I would have is that I don't think that was the point. Like, I don't think that was their goal. And I guess, are you saying that you wish it was their goal?
I think, yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. That's probably fair.
Okay, because I think what they were going for was almost a documentary feel.
Right.
There's no score.
Right.
There's like a ton of, like, most of the shots are like handheld shots. It is shot very much like in a documentary style. And I think it was mostly just to like give the facts of the rescue with like a little extra emotion added in, more than it was to actually like tell a dramatic story. Because like you said, there is no main character in this movie. Like, I mean, I guess you could say that Rick and John are the main characters, but also not really. Like, I mean, they're the ones with the most screen time,
right?
But they don't have like all the screen time because we spend a ton of time with like the Thai governor, we spend a ton of time with the parents, but it's almost so evenly split up that it's like they're all kind of on the same level of importance, which I think was the idea. But then it makes it to where you're right, we don't really get to. There's not a lot of depth to any of the characters. It'd
be next to impossible to pull off what I'm picturing, I guess, honestly. So the way to do what I would want is you almost make it a 10-hour miniseries, and like each hour, almost like you do like The Last Dance with Jordan or something, where each episode focuses on a different character and how they got there. That'd be the way to do it justice.
You could also do like a miniseries version of this told in kind of like a Rashomon style, where you tell like the story of the rescue and because as we've seen with like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things, like you could make a TV show that has a 2-hour episode in it now. So you could just do like a movie basically from the point of view of the parents, and then do the same story from the point of view of the Thai Navy SEALs, and then the same story from the point of view of the divers. And that'd really be like the only way that you could do that.
Yeah. Actually, I kind of like that idea too. Yeah.
It would take it'd be a lot longer.
Yeah, but I think it's worthy of that. I think that would have been something really special, and this was well done. But I don't know if it qualifies as something really special. And again, I'm separating the film from the actual event. I'm not trying to say this wasn't a huge event,
right?
But just from a filmmaking standpoint. There's one other little note here too. So in the film, they're kind of debating who needs to go first. They're trying to assess the health needs of everyone and try to prioritize, and they try to get the little kid out first, but they don't have a mask that fits him. They're kind of a little bit of debate on which order to send the boys out in. So did you see the true story of how they decided to send them out?
So I saw that there was like a couple of different considerations that they made. One was like they were going to get the youngest out first, or but it ultimately wasn't. They let the boys decide.
Yeah, so basically they kind of just said, we're all healthy. Like there is no sickest and healthiest here. Like we're all fine. I mean, they're hungry, but like they were all in good health, and they didn't realize there's like an entire media circus in the whole world watching outside. So they basically just said like, oh well, so and so lives farther away, so let's let him go first because he has more distance to ride home on his bike when we get out.
Oh,
they straight up went by order of who lived farthest away, because they just, in their minds, they were going to get out of the cave and then bicycle home.
That's funny.
It just having no idea what was happening outside of the cave.
That's so funny to think of. Yeah, because you don't. Yeah, and that probably wasn't even like. Because I could see how that sounds almost unbelievable. Like, how did they not know? But when everyone. Like, the only contact they have with the outside world is these divers and, like, the cave divers and, like, the Thai Navy SEALs. And the only thing that they're worried about when they come into the cave is, like, giving them medical attention, giving them food, giving them water, making sure that their, injuries aren't getting infected. It's like, they're not like, oh, hey, so you were on CNN last night.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? Like, we showed your video to the whole world. It's, that's, like, so far from their minds that, it's totally believable when you think about it that they just wouldn't have any clue how big of a deal it is that they're getting rescued.
And I did think it was appropriate to not bring up Elon Musk at all in the film, because obviously when this was going on, he felt the need to chime in. And basically he did send some like SpaceX engineers to kind of just help out and help with the brainstorming ideas. His ideas, a couple ideas that the Musk crew had, don't sound too crazy on the surface, but he obviously didn't have enough information, so they weren't actually realistic. But a couple ideas were, one was, again, basically develop some kind of mini submarine, almost probably like coffin sized, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah. Like literally just a metal tube that's big enough to fit one person, not even an adult, like one Thai boy inside of it. Right.
But again, the turns, they just wouldn't be able to get them through the turns. You couldn't have a rigid body like that.
Right.
The other idea I hadn't heard before, though, I thought was kind of interesting, but again, just not practical. Basically, almost like the material you'd make like a bouncy house for like a kid's birthday party out of. Basically, making a tube, and you just run this almost like an inner tube that you would then like inflate, and then the center would be dry. So you basically send in a cylinder that you could put all the way through, inflate it, and then you could squeeze through the center of a donut kind of thing. And again, just not practical with all the turns and stuff, but the concept I thought was at least interesting.
Right, and the fact that they're like thousands of meters into this cave.
Right.
Like,
yeah, so not practical, but as a concept, it wasn't necessarily horrible. Yeah. But then, again, I didn't pay that close enough attention to this all, but then there was like, you heard Musk like calling one of the rescuers like a pedophile or something. You're like, what is going on?
Yeah, it was like on Twitter, like there was a guy, one of the rescue divers. It wasn't any of the guys I think that we see in the movie.
It was.
Oh wait, it was the original guy.
It was the old guy from the beginning. That's the British guy. Yeah.
The original guy, like he had like Twitter beef with Elon Musk, and I think this was while the rescue was happening.
Yeah.
And he's said something about like they weren't going to use the submarine, or said something about the submarine, and Elon Musk said called him, made a tweet referring to him as a pedo.
Yeah.
For like no reason.
Yeah, basically the British guy living in Thailand basically told him to, shove his submarines up his ass kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then Elon responded with, all right, whatever, pedo guy. And then like the guy actually ended up taking Elon Musk to court for defamation over the pedo comments. And
oh my gosh,
it actually kind of got ruled in Musk's favor. Musk didn't owe him any money. They basically just decided that you guys were just trading insults on Twitter back and forth. No one cares. Like, so ultimately Musk didn't have to pay out for defamation. But anyway, just a mess.
That story right there is the most
21st century thing ever.
It's like the most last 5 years thing ever. Like,
right. Yeah.
The fact that during this harrowing rescue, where against all odds and miraculously, these divers were able to rescue these, 12 kids and their soccer coach, and also Elon Musk started Twitter beef during the middle of it and called some guy a pedophile. Like,
yeah, that's very, very on brand for the last 5-10 years.
Very on brand for Earth.
Yeah, and then fun little Easter egg for us: the guy who played that older British guy living in Thailand was the same actor who played George Whitten in Breaker Morant.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of crazy and small world from our little world of movies that we discuss. Because, that was, 40 years ago, so he's quite a bit older now.
Yeah. So I just opened up his Wikipedia page. It looks like Breaker Morant was his first role.
Oh, gotcha. Well, he was, early to mid-20s at that time, and that was 1980, so, he's not even that old. He's probably not 70 yet.
Huh.
So they mentioned in the film that the coach had them meditate to kind of help them relax and not panic, and that sounds accurate.
Oh yeah,
the coach had actually had a background in, he maybe even used to be like a Buddhist priest or something. I don't know. I apologize if I have the terms wrong, but I think he did have some religious training with the meditation and stuff. And we'll get into the religious aspects here too.
Ron Howard said that the actor actually learned meditation techniques, and then when they were on set for 15 or 20 minutes before they would shoot those scenes, they would shut all the lights off in the set and he would meditate with the actors that were playing the boys.
Oh wow.
Because for a lot of them, this was their first ever role.
Right.
They had never been on a movie set before.
Right, maybe non-professional actors, yeah.
Right, yeah. So that, he was using those same techniques to keep the actors calm.
That's cool.
When they were like, okay, we're going to fill this set up with water and shut all the lights off. And, and they're little kids.
Right.
Also, apparently when they showed this shot in the movie where the kid lifts his shirt up and he says, I'm hungry, and he's super emaciated, I was like, man, is that kid just that skinny?
Probably.
How is that? No, it's all digital.
Oh,
which
okay.
Good on them. The effects were really good. It looked completely real to me. I was like, man. And especially because they were doing so much other stuff practically, I was like, surely they aren't having these kids restrict their food intake.
No, I guess I just assumed they found really skinny kids. But you're right, they actually look different than before they went in, so that makes sense.
And they are skinny, but they're not that skinny.
Okay, fair.
Because that's unhealthy skinny.
That's true.
Oh, one little tidbit that I had about the two divers that died.
Yes.
I thought that they were both active Thai Navy SEALs.
The one that drowned was retired, yeah.
They both were.
Oh, okay.
Both of those guys they were ex-Navy SEALs, and basically they had come out of retirement
to help with the
rescue because they had diving experience, so they showed up and were helping. Also, the guy that drowned in the cave,
Yeah.
he wasn't alone like we see in the movie.
Oh, right. And I didn't see anything about that thing getting caught either. It wasn't necessarily, that's not necessarily how it went down, right?
Yeah, he had a partner who was with him, and like kind of, no one really knows what happened. It's just kind of like all of a sudden not getting air, stopped breathing. Right. And then the partner's like, oh, okay, we got to get you back. And he basically died on the way back. It wasn't like a, catastrophic failure where this guy's by himself, like we see in the movie.
Right. But it was in the process of transferring kind of setup. Like they were setting tanks and stuff along the way. Like it was just kind of part of that. He wasn't directly.
Right. Yeah. The circumstances around the mission were real, but the fact that he was alone, that wasn't true. I also wanted to bring up the really huge international response to the incident. If you go on the Wikipedia page, there's a list of like all of the countries that sent either people or equipment, rescue specialists, pumps, divers. So Australia, obviously, Richard Harris is from Australia. That's Joel Edgerton's character. He actually won Australian of the Year in 2019. I
saw that, yeah.
because of his involvement in this rescue. And then, John Valantham, Richard Harris, a bunch of other Brits were involved. But also, and then we see the U.S. military sent a bunch of people there. But also Belgium, Canada, China, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Ireland, India, Israel, Japan, Laos, Netherlands. This one was interesting. Both Russia and Ukraine. All those countries either sent people or equipment or, support.
Right.
So it really was like for the whole world, like an all hands on deck situation to rescue these 12 kids and their soccer coach.
Yeah, and honestly, to a point where I felt really, kind of ashamed, honestly, when I was kind of watching this film and realized how detached I was from it. And obviously, it's kind of like we talked about with like Queen Elizabeth. It's like, well, you can't get emotionally invested in everything that happens all over the world. Like, that's probably not healthy either. But just how I basically had no idea what was going on. I was peripherally aware that a rescue effort was underway. And that was about the extent of my interest at the time. And it was almost like it's an idle curiosity. And when you see it then up close through the lens of a movie, you kind of feel ashamed that you weren't more invested, especially when it is this worldwide thing. Not that I didn't care, but like I just wasn't paying attention. And again, I kind of felt bad when I was watching the movie.
Yeah, even to the point where when I first started watching the movie, I was like, did all these kids make it out?
Right.
Like, I honestly don't remember.
Right.
Like, did any of these divers not make it out? Right. I honestly have no idea.
And I had no idea how the solution, when they were trying to figure out the solution, I was like, man, what did they figure out? Like, I know they figured out something because they get out, but I have no idea. I had no idea how they got them out.
Yeah, I was like, because I did not hear about this movie at all. Like, it flew completely under my radar until literally my wife and I were like, turn on the TV, just to see, like, let's pick a movie to watch. And, we have the Fire TV. So it's like, oh, Amazon, this new movie, 13 Lives just came out. I was like, oh, that looks like Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell. I wonder what that is. I haven't heard of it. It was like directed by Ron Howard. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is good. I was like, what is it about? It was like, oh, the rescue of the Thai soccer team. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that, but that was like just a couple years ago. Wasn't there something with Elon Musk in that? Oh yeah, let's check that out. That'll be interesting. And I had no idea about the movie, but also about the actual incident.
Well, and then same, I hadn't heard about the movie until you recommended it to me.
Okay,
after you watched it.
I was going to say, had you heard anything about this movie?
No.
Yeah, I started getting ads for it after I watched it. I would get like Instagram ads and stuff for it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this. But I hadn't heard anything about it until I saw it, front page recommended to me by Amazon.
My one other little note before I do want to kind of talk about the history of Thailand briefly here. My one little note was, and they kind of do address this in the movie, but I feel like the movie undersold how vast. And to me, the movie made it feel like it's this one path, and it's just how far you go on this one path. It's a network of interconnected caves and a million different paths you could take, and they do kind of talk to the one boy who planned on going with them but couldn't make it or whatever. He had to go set up for whatever reason he wasn't with them. One of the guys from practice, he's like, oh, here's where they usually go. that was like vital. Otherwise, they're just looking everywhere and they wouldn't even know which path they took. So I think the movie kind of undersold that. And that's if you're going to heighten up tension, you can almost kind of heighten that up too, where it's like, how are we ever possibly going to know which direction they went?
Yeah. And they use that to ratchet up the tension at the end of the movie during the rescue, because there's that one diver who's carrying a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And the current pulls him away from the line. He lets go of it, and it like snaps away from him, and he can't find it. And then he like pops up, and he's like, I have no idea where I am.
Right.
And he's kind of freaking out until the next diver shows up and says, oh, you're here. You just need to go this way. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I thought I was about to die.
Right, and I was confused by his fear because I thought the movie undersold how confusing of a network it was.
Yeah.
I was like, where else are you going to go? In my mind.
Right.
I was like, I get that you need the rope because the visibility is bad, but like, I don't know what else you're going to, like, I didn't see why he had a bunch of other options. So I was kind of confused.
Yeah.
That's the movie could have probably sold that better. The other thing, too, obviously, the current is really bad and the visibility is bad, but like, that I mentioned that interview, they were talking about zero visibility. And I think the movie undersold just how opaque the water actually was. Of course, it's also dark.
Yeah.
Even with the lights, though, the water was so dirty, it was zero visibility. Right. And I don't think the movie really illustrated that well.
It's almost not necessarily even water as much as it was like really, really thin mud. Like you literally can't see.
Right. And you're going by feel then and have to navigate. Yeah, that's crazy. I think the movie could have done better with that.
Yeah. I saw a video that was talking about like a different cave incident that happened. I should have written it down. I apologize. Maybe I'll, correct this on a later bonus episode or something. But is like,
put it on Instagram.
In the United States, there was a guy who was doing some cave exploring in a really tight cave like this, not underwater, just regular cave. And it was kind of what you said, where it's like, this really vast network of these really narrow tunnels and stuff. He got kind of turned around, made a wrong turn, thought he was in this one part of the cave where it's like this really tight spot, but if you just keep going a little bit further, you get to this opening where he could have turned around and then came out the way he came. So he's just like, oh, I just need to get a little bit further. Turns out he had made a wrong turn. He was in a completely unmapped section of the cave, got stuck upside down between two rocks, and there was this like hours-long rescue attempt to get him out, and it was unsuccessful. He died in this cave, and they couldn't even get his body out. They literally just poured a bunch of concrete in the cave, sealed it, and that's his tomb, and now there's a memorial for him there.
Oh my gosh.
And like,
that's insane.
Watching the video is like, it's horrifying because
you get claustrophobic, yeah.
You just see his feet sticking up out of this tiny little tunnel in the rock. And it's like,
yeah,
there's nothing they can do. Nothing anyone can do.
Makes me think of, this isn't quite the same thing, but I saw like a video of, it's like just people hanging out at a pool party, and all of a sudden like a sinkhole opens and like the pool just disappears into the ground, and like a guy that was like on a floaty in the middle of the pool is just disappears like in a second, and you're like, and then
yeah.
And then you're reading the comments, they're like, yeah, he died. Like, it's just craziness. We take the ground for granted that it's gonna be there. Ugh.
Yeah, all those stories in the Bible where the earth opens up and swallows people whole. Yeah, that can happen in real life.
yeah. Good night, everybody.
It could happen to you right now. Okay, so I just looked it up. The guy's name was John Jones, and the name of the cave is Nutty Putty Cave, and it's in Utah.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, if you want to learn more about that, you can go read more about that, but it's terrifying. Terrifying to think about.
Yeah, I'm not super claustrophobic, but I'm probably a little claustrophobic, and caves, just in general, put me a little on edge, and I always kind of have the thought in the back of my mind, anytime there's like a scary, either natural wonder or man-made thing that's a little scary, but like there's a lot of people enjoying it, I'm always like, well, I mean, if anything does happen, it's going to make national news. It's like, and in my mind, that's like a solace. Like, it must be safe because what are the odds I'm going to make national news? But then, like, you see stuff like this, these cave-ins. It's like, well, no, it can happen. It can't happen. You could make national news.
And it does make national news.
But yeah, I wonder how many people think about that ahead of time before you get in these situations. Okay, so I'll kind of end here with just kind of a rundown of the history of Thailand. Usually I like to do that first as kind of an introduction to the world of the movie. But here, this is such kind of this incident doesn't have anything to do with any political or historical context necessarily, other than these caves exist in Thailand.
Right.
And so there wasn't really anything relevant about the history of Thailand.
Specifically in northern Thailand, which apparently is culturally and like linguistically different from what you think about like in Bangkok or something. And I actually saw a comment on a YouTube video. Someone from Thailand was like, this movie does such a great job of, having all the actors like speak in this northern dialect.
Oh, okay.
And, having like all of the Thai cultural stuff that they show in the movie, because there is actually a lot, is all apparently very accurate and very faithful to how people actually live and cook and act and their religious practices and stuff in this northern part of Thailand.
And I feel bad because I actually forgot to look up. So Thailand has a lot of history with both Buddhist and Hindu religion coming in from India, but these people were probably Buddhist, if I had to guess.
I think they're Buddhist, yeah.
Okay. And so we see a lot of those practices. So I want to talk about the history here because we hadn't really talked about Thailand much on our whole history timeline. This is actually gonna be the most farthest along the world history we've gotten on our timeline here.
Have we mentioned Thailand at all? Has Thailand been in any of the previous episodes?
It may have come up because it's right next to Cambodia and Vietnam that we've talked about. But
okay.
But yeah, I'm trying to think too. And where was Year of Living Dangerously set? Was that Indonesia?
Yeah, that wasn't Thailand.
Right. Okay.
I don't think we've done any movies that are actually set in Thailand.
Right. So I kind of somehow lost track that Thailand is what was known in Europe for centuries as Siam. So like the King of Siam, that's all Thailand. So yes, this is where like Siamese cats are from. So it's basically just an Anglicization, Westernization. So like the Thai people, that's Siam's never thing they used. Kind of like the whole Peking for Beijing. There was just one of these European names that was given was Siam.
Right.
But that is the exact same country.
Like Burma and Myanmar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which is a neighbor of Thailand here. So, and also Thailand, for this part of the world, Thailand has kind of a unique distinction. It was never it was never colonized. It was never under direct European control. So like Europe took over all the stuff around them, and outside of maybe some, World War I, World War II military occupation stuff, outside of that, there's never been a Western country in control of Thailand. It's either been other Asian countries like Vietnam, Burma. Other Asian countries might have had influence, but it was never actually under the control of a European power, which is kind of unique for this part of the world. Now, the simple version is basically that Britain controlled Burma/Myanmar, and French Indochina was what is now Vietnam.
Right.
And they kind of both just said, not even necessarily like out loud, but like, maybe it's a good idea to leave this buffer zone so we aren't fighting over here. And Thailand/Siam was that buffer zone between British-controlled and French-controlled in the area. And then the Dutch East Indies is what is now Indonesia to the south. So It was kind of surrounded, but everyone kind of just left it alone as like neutral territory as far as the Europeans were concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, you just have great farmland here. You see how much rain they get. So great farmland. So that leads to a high population. Copper and bronze mines were also very important from going back thousands of years. Copper and bronze was mined here in Thailand. The first inhabitants probably migrated from southern China, but basically there's been people in Thailand for as long as there's been people about anywhere. There's been farming in Thailand for about as long as there's been farming anywhere on the planet. So it's just a very, very old place with a lot of history of humans and early humans. There's I think they even found like Homo erectus remains from 500,000 years ago in Thailand. Like people have been in Thailand for a very, very long time. Lots of different tribes. The Khmer, we did talk about Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and all that kind of stuff. So earlier forms of the Khmer, obviously not the Rouge because that was communist, but like there was Khmer tribes or kingdoms, 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, whatever. The Khmer did kind of rule over Thailand for a while. And then finally, the Thai did kind of separate themselves, and the Thai people started having control over their own country. First with the Sukhothai kingdom in the 13th century, and then after that kind of splintered and fractured, it was replaced by the Ayutthaya kingdom, or Ayutthaya. I heard it on YouTube and now I can't remember. Anyway, so another kingdom, and it was kind of a major city. Ayutthaya. Anyways, there was a city of the same name that was like super successful, and it had this thriving city. Not Bangkok. It was a different city that was like the center of this kingdom that kind of held sway for a long time. You also had a lot of Indian influence. That's where the Buddhist and Hindu religions kind of came into play. So yeah, the Ayutthaya kingdom was like the one in charge when Europe started exploring and discovering the Southeast Asia area. So they never took over, but they were definitely trading with the Ayutthaya kingdom, and it kind of thrived. Was kind of just very successful economically. They did kind of then start to have concerns about too much European influence, and maybe they're losing some of their cultural identity. So they kind of shut themselves off from the West a little bit. But, we get into the 18th century, and art and literature are kind of thriving, just a really rich culture. Then you get Burma, again, now Myanmar, kind of takes over the area for a while, and they're under Burmese control. And again, I'm kind of using the names just because these were the names in the video. These are the names they called them. So basically, it's
right.
Burma, now Myanmar, takes over. Siam, now Thailand, kind of bounces back. And the current ruling family, like the family that's still the king of Thailand today, even though they're a constitutional monarchy, but the ruling king, their family took over in the 1700s. And then specifically, you think about the musical The King and I, that is set in the 1860s, and it would have been the king from that same family that took over in the 1700s and is still on the throne today. And actually, I'm not sure why we never really talked about doing The King and I, because that is based on the memoirs of an actual British governess who went to Siam/Thailand in the 1800s. So another possibility for a movie we could talk about at some point.
Yeah. And it's Yul Brynner.
Who we are big fans of. Yeah.
Playing ethnically ambiguous guy.
Yes. And it was this family, this ruling family, that moved the capital city to what is now Bangkok, because actually that other city I mentioned was kind of destroyed by the Burmese. When they invaded, they just completely destroyed that previous city that was like the main city. And then trade with Europe increases again. And then the 20th century kind of actually becomes a little bit of a mess of instability in Thailand. So there's tons of coups. And it's honestly, you could do a whole podcast, like not a podcast episode, like a whole multi-episode, multi-year podcast just about the politics in 20th century Thailand. So we're not going to do that. But
weren't there just a bunch of like riots or like demonstrations and stuff like within the last couple years, right?
And yeah, it's still kind of ongoing. So yes, so it kind of starts. There was a coup that kind of forces the absolute monarchy to become a constitutional monarchy. Then during World War II, they end up on Japan's side. It doesn't sound like this. They were huge fans of Japan, but it's almost just like, yeah, fine, we got to pick a side. We'll pick Japan. And so they were with the Japanese during World War II, which then kind of got them occupied by the Allies after the war. And the U.S. and Thailand never actually declared war on each other, versus like I think Britain and Thailand did. So the U.S. was kind of in a better situation to be buddy-buddy with Thailand after the fact. But then they were one of our allies through the Cold War. Thailand was even kind of an operating base for U.S. forces during the Vietnam War, because they were our allies with us. And then actually the Thai Navy SEALs, who we see in the film, that goes back to the 1950s. The Thai Navy SEALs were organized and created in the 1950s. And they actually trained and work extensively with the U.S. Navy SEALs, because they are kind of one of our major allies in the region. But, so even though this was set up as a constitutional monarchy, there's lots of coups, and like the military kind of basically would take over for a stretch at a time, and then like democracy would win out, and like the prime minister would actually have the control again. So the monarchy is still kind of in the background. It's kind of toggling back and forth between constitutional monarchy with a prime minister, or the military is in charge from like military coup stuff, or it's like everything's still there. Like the prime minister doesn't go away, but the military's calling the shots, and then the military doesn't go away, but the prime minister's calling the shots. And like that's kind of toggled back and forth from like the 40s to the present, where it's technically a democracy, but maybe the votes don't count because the military is just going to call the shots anyway. And just as of like 2019, it's a little bit more back in the prime minister's hands, but it's a country that has a lot of corruption still, and things are maybe just like a little shady with, the people calling the shots behind the scenes, and the elections are maybe sometimes getting called out for election fraud, and it's fine. It is technically a stable democracy, but there's just a lot of corruption and a lot of shadiness maybe behind the scenes. But it is a very popular tourist destination, and kind of has a mix of, very, very modern westernized stuff with cities like Bangkok, but also very traditional rural markets and stuff throughout the country. So it's definitely this mix of modern urban and ancient rural and cultural traditions. And basically that's Thailand. As best as I could approximate here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And one thing I forgot to look up was like, they do have that little shrine, the sleeping lady outside of the cave. And I meant to look into the history of that, and I kind of just forgot as far as like who this figure is in Buddhism and what the story was with that. Because they were kind of obviously, like you said, a lot of that cultural stuff, they were in religious stuff, they were trying to pray and have these little things little bracelets blessed by the monk there or whatever. And again, I didn't really look into all the religious details there, but like you said, it sounds like they got it pretty accurate.
So it looks like the origin of that, the sleeping princess is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet thing almost. It's like a Thai version of that story. It's like a legend that a princess fell in love with her stable boy, very Princess Bride,
yeah.
Their love was forbidden, and they like fled and went into the cave. The boy went out to look for food and was caught by the king, the princess's father, and was killed. And she, in her,
grief,
depression and sadness, kills herself, and the blood is now the water that's in the cave.
Oh, wow. So she's not sleeping. She's dead?
And it's all because the mountain range, which there is a shot in the movie that shows it, but the mountain range, when looked at from a certain angle, looks like a woman lying down on her back.
Okay. Oh, this did look like a beautiful country, by the way, too. Like, I mean, the rain would kind of be miserable if you're there during monsoon season. It just doesn't stop, but, like, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah. The name of the mountain range, this is probably not a correct pronunciation, but Doi Nang Non is the name of the mountain range, Mountain of the Sleeping Lady.
Nice. Okay, now say the name of the cave.
Tom Luang, which is actually, so that means Great Cave. I don't know if we said that already, but Tom Luang means Great Cave. That's just the name of the cave that they got. So I guess it has like a few different names that people will refer to it as, but that's like the most common one.
Okay. Well, I think we kind of covered everything, right? From the rescue to the history of Thailand to the movie itself.
I think so. Oh, I did have one little factoid here for you. John Valanthan, Colin Farrell's character, is an ultra marathon runner, like as a hobby.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And in order to kind of get in his headspace, or, to help him connect with the character, Colin Farrell actually trained for a marathon and ran a marathon while they were shooting this movie.
Okay, he said something about that during the interview I saw. He mentioned Colin having ran a marathon, and I kind of lost track of what he was talking about. Okay.
Yeah. In the video with Ron Howard, he was talking about how he wasn't really stoked on the idea because, like, they were in the middle of shooting all these like really physically intensive like underwater scenes and stuff where they're having, actually they were doing all their diving work.
Right.
And Colin Farrell told Ron Howard like, "Hey, I'm running this marathon this weekend." And he was like, "Okay, but like, I'm not going to tell you can't, but just know that you still got to come in on Monday and like you got to do all the work." And he said he showed back up on Monday and he was hurting, but I didn't take it easy on him because he said that's what he wanted to do, so I let him do it.
That's interesting. So I will say too, so I've definitely been a fan of Viggo from Lord of the Rings and some of the interesting things he's done since then. He's a very, very talented actor who probably doesn't work enough, but I think it's because he's very selective about the jobs he takes. Colin Farrell's one who's kind of done a lot of weird roles and maybe are action movies, and so someone that I don't know, I think
Colin Farrell's underrated.
And I don't think I realized that until this. I really liked him in this more like toned down, just everyman role versus when he does kind of like these bigger roles, I don't think he's necessarily great at or doesn't get cast well, and just, I mean, like In Bruges is fun, but like, I don't know. I think he's better just as an everyday guy, and he was really good in this in a very subdued performance, which I liked, having seen him in a lot of like bigger performances in the past.
Yeah, he does do a lot of weird stuff. He was in Lobster, is a pretty weird Colin Farrell performance.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah.
He's really good in Horrible Bosses, where he's like kind of like a middle-aged, like overweight, balding guy.
Okay.
Who's just a complete dickhead to everybody. That's one of actually his funnier roles. Like that and In Bruges, I think, are really funny. But yeah, no, I really like Colin Farrell. I think he's underrated, like as an actually skilled actor, because you're right, like especially earlier in his career, he was in just a lot of like action movies where he's not really, his acting chops are not really tested very much. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I actually really like. It's like a kind of a psychological thriller horror movie that you would not like. But
was it also Yorgos Lanthimos?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I dug The Favorite, but his other stuff is just kind of too weird. And The Lobster is one I'll recommend to certain people, but I'll even recommend it with the caveat that I didn't really like it, but it's different. So if you like different, watch The Lobster.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, yeah, I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. We hadn't actually done anything for our world history timeline in quite a while, with talking about the Crown, the Vikings, and getting into American history, which we're recording. I guess at the time of this comes out, we won't yet have started our American history thing. But yeah, it's been a while since we've done world history. Wanted to throw something else out there.
This is now our most recent movie on the timeline.
Yes.
I mean, it probably will be for a while until they come out with, like
COVID movies,
coronavirus movie, or something else that we have to do. But
anyway, yes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you later.